Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Dave.
All right.
Good morning, all.
Good morning, Supervisor Wickham. And I see Supervisor McDonough is on. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning again.
All right. I jumped on early and then was running around the house doing stuff, so I'm at home today. Okay, we'll convene the meeting of the Dubuque County Board of Supervisors, Monday, June 29th, 2020, 10 a.m. On the agenda, first up is work session to discuss the COVID-related issues. We do have a request from Board of Health Chair Tom Beschen to move an item up on the agenda. So I'm going to ask Tom to jump in and we'll do just that.
Okay, thank you, Chair Baker. I guess I'd have to start the meeting by saying it does not appear that there is a quorum from the Board of Health on the meeting yet. We have 3 individuals, myself, Diane Pape-Freiberger, and Diane Heiken on the call, but we will have, I'm sure, others calling in as we proceed. The reason I asked...
McDonough, Tom, do you have a formal meeting notice for your Board of Health?
It is under the work session, the school reopening guidance, Ann.
Correct, but you're not having an official Board of Health meeting, right?
No, this was an update. If it could be that we would want to take some action, but without a board, without a chair, quorum, we can't do that.
Right, and without an agenda for your health department, could you take action?
We have taken action in the past under work sessions related to COVID.
This is described as just a Board of Supervisors meeting.
Yeah, let's let, if there's a question on that, let's let the county attorney handle that. I don't think that's a supervisor or Board of Health decision. I don't know if CJ's on or not.
I don't know that you're planning to take action. Just I wasn't expecting you to see if you have a quorum. This appears to be just like an update, like any other time you just have an update.
And Chair Beschen, it's possible that the discussion today could lead to action on your Wednesday night meeting. You're meeting every Wednesday evening, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
And this item will be on our agenda for Wednesday night.
I think that takes care of any concerns we have about this. So I think the action could come on Wednesday night if there is action. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I'd like to explain the situation. Last Thursday, the 25th of June, the Iowa Department of Education guidance issued a letter reopening guidance for schools. And in that letter, they had 10 recommendations. Recommendation number 4 stated, and I quote, "Requiring face coverings for all staff and students is not recommended. Allow personal use of cloth coverings by staff and students." It was felt, particularly by me, that this fell short of what the message that the Board of Health has delivered in the past when we recommended the mask of wellness as a mitigation strategy for Dubuque County. And what we were planning to do was issue a letter of recommendations to the schools regarding our opinion of that. Since that time, I understand that the Iowa Department of Education and Iowa Department of Public Health are reviewing their recommendation and will be issuing updated guidance. So at this point, I'm not sure that we want to take any action at all until we learn what that recommendation might be. I understand that Ed Raber has spoken with at least one of the school superintendents, and I would invite Ed to chime in if he's got anything to add.
Ed, I have a question. At whose direction have you reached out to the schools? This is all brand new information to me.
That was the discussion that was planned for this morning. Oh, you are talking to Ed, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I've got an interim director talking to school administrators, superintendents, in fact, and I'm seeing our guests are folks, joining us, and thank you for all being present. But I don't think that the interim director sets the course and agenda for the county.
Thank you, Ann. This is Ed. The agenda came out on Friday, and I reached out to Chair Baker and Chair Beshen and asked them if they thought that since we had an agenda item about school reopening, if we should at least let the local school superintendents know that that was an agenda item that we had. And that's what based on the feedback that I received from them, the chairs, I dropped them at the end of the day. I dropped them a note that this was an agenda item that we were having.
Yeah, this is Dave Baker. Chair Tom Beshen and I were in agreement that the standards issued were not sufficient in our opinions. And I have asked Ed to get involved in this. I believe it's one of his roles. It's COVID-19 related. And I don't think we need to undermine his efforts. He was acting on behalf of the chair of the Board of Supervisors and the chair of the Board of Health.
Okay, that's an answer.
Okay, I would recommend that since we have, this is Supervisor Jay Wickham, we have both of the superintendents from Western Dubuque and Dubuque Community Schools. I'd be very interested in just hearing what their plans are, their ideas, their thoughts. So one, we could understand, and two, we might be able to weigh in to help. So if we could proceed to those two individuals, I would be very pleased.
Well, we have several individuals, so we might just ask all that want to participate. We have lots of folks here that would have interest in this issue. So if that's what we're going to do,
sounds good. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about what we're going to talk about. Let's go.
I'm going to ask Ed Raber to kind of frame where we're at, and then Ed, you'll know who to turn it over to. I'm not sure exactly who's on. I see a list of names here. So Ed, if you could just kind of briefly frame the issue for those, and keep in mind, a lot of the folks are hearing this for the first time.
Yes. So as I said, when this got placed on the agenda, I, after touching base with the board chairs, I sent those superintendents or chief administrators or principals, what have you, at those public and parochial school districts here, just a note saying that this was a discussion item. There isn't anything in the packet. And this morning, a couple of those superintendents have been in contact with me. The thing that I think Supervisor Wickham just mentioned, I think that they have an interest in sharing where they are with their planning that's going to be coming out soon. I don't anticipate that they have not announced that publicly on their own websites or to their own constituents. I don't think anybody's going to disclose what their plans are, but that they have been working on this for 4 to 6 weeks. Within the context of discussions that are going to happen here about reviewing that school guidance, that guidance ends up falling on the institutions that they lead. So if you, they have a keen interest in any guidance that may come from the Board of Supervisors or the Board of Health. And if you wanted to get an update on the kind of planning that they've been undertaking for the last month within their own district, I'm sure they would be happy to share that with you. They also do not have access to the updated guidelines that we anticipate from the Department of Education after they issued their initial guidelines on June 25th. So they await that just as I think everyone else does. But they are the parties that locally are the administrators of our districts, and they certainly seem to have a keen interest in working with Dubuque County and the Board of Health on any input or feedback that they would have as before they unveil their plans.
Chair Bashan, this is Dave Baker. I know we have Rick Colpitz from West Dubuque. I was at a meeting last week with Rick on transportation. Stan Reingans up here is on, and I know there's some others. So unless some objection, we could start with, I'll go alphabetically. I'll be rather than choose which one to go first, we'll go with Rick Colpitz, and then Stan can jump in after Rick. So if somebody can unmute Rick Colpitz.
I'm here, Dave.
All right, thank you.
So, yeah, we've been working on our return to learn plan for 6 weeks. We have a health and safety committee that has oversight and making recommendations to a larger team. So we have 5 different subcommittees that have been working. Health and safety is one of them. I think that would be the one that most connects to what you're talking about with regard to this. And they've been working with our health officials in the district. They've been working with Tom Berger as well. I think they reached out to Patrice. We've gotten really very little information with regard to what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing, whether you're talking about wearing a mask or really any of the other things. So we've been following the plan. I don't think I can summarize a 40-page document in a couple of minutes, but it's pretty extensive. And we've been working on it, like I said, 5 different subcommittees, one larger team of about 15 at the district level that include parents, include board members, include administrators. So in the end, you know, we've got this plan. So if you're thinking that you're going to come back with some guidance about mask or something like that, that's a huge thing to us. Because if you're going to make a recommendation that goes against something we've been working on for 6 weeks to try and craft it in such a way that works for our district, and then you're going to supersede or override that with something else, that's a game changer, because this is due on Wednesday. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that return to learn plan we've been working on for 6 weeks is due, and we've got hundreds of hours of time into that. And so this is a little late to be coming to the game with some sort of changes, I guess, is what I'd have to say.
Yep. Rick, Dave Baker, I'm gonna weigh in here. I think many people, including myself, were shocked at the lack of guidance that was included in the state. I assume that your committee is you know, I know the state put out the minimum guidelines, if you will,
Yeah.
and that my guess is that the committee is working on some, you know, some other things. And until you just said that, I wasn't actually aware of that. But I think the shock was with everything that's going on nationally, and even in Dubuque County, we're up to 500 cases now. I think there was some sticker shock when the state rolled out their guidelines, which seemed pretty loose. I would say that's maybe stating it mildly. So maybe we need to focus on that. I don't think anybody's from here is trying to tell the schools what they have to do, but I guess know that the Board of Health, which it's a volunteer board, but they're very active. And, you know, we've adopted the Masks of Wellness program. We've had people out on weekends giving out masks. We provided masks, thousands of masks for people. So that, in that context, if you want to just tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, I think, I don't know what Stan's thoughts are about this, but in the end, I think the guidance was certainly a lot looser, I think is the word you used, Dave. That's probably an accurate term than we were expecting. We did expect some specifics, maybe even like some metrics associated with what happens if something happens during the school year. We're back to regular learning, and then there's an outbreak in a school. What procedurally we should do, and in the end, the guidance was, you know, they say 30,000 feet. I think it was 100,000 feet. Quite honestly, it was much higher than 30,000 feet, and it was like hands off and local control was the message that I got anyway.
Okay. Yeah, and I as well, Rick, and I do have faith in our school districts, administration, and our school boards to make, you know, the right decisions. But again, we had a whole segment of, you know, that was released in the media, and I think, again, sticker shock is probably the best term I can come up with. So,
yep.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Any questions for Rick? Tom, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I'm sorry. I kind of, this is an important topic, and I want to make sure that, yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
So thank you, Rick, for your comments. Stan, did you have any comments you wanted to make?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for letting us know this meeting was taking place today. And I concur pretty much with what Rick said. Just to give you a little background, what we've been working on for this time is really 3 different plans. There's the plan that if all kids are required to come back to school, so a normal start to the school year on August 13th, which is when both of our districts starts, what will the PPE look like for staff, for students? Then we have a plan that's a hybrid plan. So what if we were in a situation with social distancing where we can only bring half of our students back at a time? And so what do those plans look like? And what about if we go to distance learning options? So we've been focusing on, so we have the same 5 committees that Rick does. Rick and I have talked often. We've met Phil from Holy Family also is meeting with us. So we can be on the same page as much as possible, because, you know, this is uncharted territory for us. Safety is our number 1 commitment. I don't know if you saw the front page of the TH on Sunday. We were fortunate to be able to have a graduation. I thought the picture showed all the work that went into social distancing. Yeah, Mary Rose Corrigan was an important part of that. She did some walkthroughs with us. We are tied in with Mary Rose and with the other districts. The PPE question is going to continue to unfold. Our plan that comes out later this week is going to talk about some different scenarios. It'll be followed up with a survey to ask questions of families and of staff to see, you know, I guess if they have any things that we haven't thought of. But it won't be a definitive answer on PPE on July 1st, because that's still almost 8 weeks before the school year starts, and that may change. But know that the PPE is an important part of deciding whether we're in full attendance mode, whether we're in half attendance mode and some type of hybrid every other day option, or whether we're at distance learning. So those things are all really closely tied together. One decision rests on the other decision. One of the things that I think Rick and I, and I won't speak for Rick or Phil, but one of the things that we've talked about is, you know, local decisions about whether you're in attendance or in hybrid or at a distance, or whether you shut down a building or shut down the whole district, where is that guidance at? You know, if I have a kindergartner sick in Sageville, do I keep that kindergarten classroom home for 3 days or 14 days? Do I close down Sageville Elementary for 3 days or 14 days? Do I close down the district? So a lot of those metrics, we're trying to get on the same page, and maybe that's, and we're certainly working with the healthcare professionals like Mary Rose to try and get our arms around that, because generally it's outside of the, it's not the training a superintendent has. Pandemic tracing is not something I've studied a great deal about until recently. So those types of things, I think we are trying to figure out. It would be nice from a countywide basis that, Rick and I and Phil responded somewhat similarly to those types of situations. But just know that we're walking through entire days. What happens when a kid shows up at the bus stop? What happens when the kid gets on the bus? What does the bus look like? Do we take temperatures? Do we take temperatures before they get on the bus? Do we take temperatures after they get on the bus? Do they wear a mask on the bus? Do they wear, what about kids arriving to school in a car? What about kids walking to school? We're even talking about, do we purchase every family a thermometer and send it home and say, take your kid's temperature before you come? So many of those decisions. What about water fountains? I can't run a school with 1,600 kids if water fountains are shut off on these hot days in August. And right now, water fountains are an issue. So how do we, can we procure 20,000 plastic bottles of water every day to give every child who shows up at school 2 water bottles so that they are hydrated for the day? So just know we're having hundreds of conversations about all of these aspects and what is best practice. So we are looking at what the state put out. We're looking at what the CDC put out. We're looking at what the NEA put out. And Tammy Deere, I believe, is on this call. She's our unit president. She is an awesome help for us, because we do want the input from our employees as well. What about kids who are medically fragile? What about employees who are medically fragile? Our bus drivers tend to be a demographic a little bit more at risk. What if I can't get kids to school? I mean, there are literally thousands of small issues that we're trying to plan through. And one of those things, as Rick said, is the PPE and the safety pieces of that. And, is it feasible to put a 6-year-old in a mask for 7 hours in a kindergarten classroom? So we're learning as we go, and we appreciate the fact that this is on your radar, and we may have some very specific asks. One of those things likely could be, and again, we're working through Mary Rose, so when I say specific asks, it probably would funnel through her. When do we know about shutting down a school? Is it a parent of a student who's been exposed at their workplace? And so just lots of those things that we're working through. We've got 5 committees, as Rick said, and we're trying to best, to role play every possible scenario. So what we put out later this week won't have the definitive answer around PPE. That likely won't come until 2 weeks before school starts or something like that. We're certainly purchasing a lot of PPE equipment and hand sanitizers and face shields and everything you can imagine. So we're prepared for any possible outcome or any possible solution. It's costing us a fortune. School budgets are going to be trashed for the next several years. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but that's the reality of what we're being asked to decide.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Stan. Appreciate your comments. You mentioned Phil Borman. Phil, did you have any comments you wanted to make?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. What Rick and Stan have said are true for Holy Family as well in terms of the planning processes. Is we've got to get the same things in order as they do and kind of think through some of these circumstances, and again, in partnership with them. So we've been fortunate to be able to work with them. The things that are pressing on my mind are, who's driving the bus? So when the state came out and said, look, local control and talk to your Dubuque County, people who are elected to represent your area, what type of direction are we going to be receiving? And what type of notice are we going to have? And so when we're trying to make some of these decisions on, as Stan said, when are we closed? When are we open? Is it a partial closure, partial reopen? And are those our directives? Are those recommendations? And so kind of knowing where our lines are and who are the decision makers in the process, that's going to be helpful for us. We certainly don't want to go against what people are recommending locally for what PPE needs to be required for students or staff, but sometimes it's just not feasible, right? We don't have endless pockets to do whatever we would like to do. And so we just need to know, who's making the decisions and when does it fall on local control, and will that ever be usurped in some way where we no longer have that control. So this is, it's a fuzzy kind of place that we're in. We're trying to make, quite a few plans, and quite honestly, we just want to be back in school and in as safely as possible. But it's once we get back in school, what are the ramifications of those decisions, and if we do have a spike, what's the fallout of that, and what kind of guidance can we rely on from our Dubuque County health officials?
Okay. Thank you, Phil.
I'd like to say, in terms of people that are on the call, Chair Beshin, Marcel from Beckman High School is also on the call. He's the principal at Beckman. If you'd like to check to see if Marcel would be interested in.
I was just going to ask if anyone else wanted to speak. From the
Supervisor, I'll be brief because a lot of what I would say has already been said by most of the other school administrators that are on the call today. So I think what Phil just mentioned is probably the piece that's important to us. Let me get in a spot where I can a little bit more light. Here we go. So I guess the biggest piece that we would be talking about too is at what point do certain things have to be done with the Board of Health. So for example, if we get a positive case that happens in school, what do we do with contact tracing? What do we do for, as Phil said, social distancing pieces? There are some instances where some of those things in a school setting become very difficult. And so we're going to be looking for some help with those pieces on that. When I watched and listened to the guidance on Thursday as well that was put out, a lot of it is saying to work locally with your local boards of health, with your local officials. So I think at this point in the return to learn plan that we're doing is really trying to look at those big picture pieces. And now, as we continue to watch what the conditions of the medical situation are and what's happening with cases and the like, some of those things will have to be adjusted as we go with that. And I think that's where we could use assistance in terms of what we're looking for from schools, is to help us work through those situations, what's locally going to be recommended, if that's what the state continues to give for the guidance. I think what they're trying to look at is what works in Dubuque might not necessarily work in Southwest Iowa or up in the Northwest.
We can't hear you anymore, Michelle. Michelle?
Forward. So hopefully some of this revisions that are coming out, when those come out, will give us some of that information too.
Okay. Well, we as well will be anxious to look at the revisions once we receive them. Okay. Others?
Beshin, this is Dave Baker. I had a question, and I heard Stan Reingans, the superintendent of Dubuque Community School District, say that they have involved the Dubuque Education Association and my good friend Tammy Deere in the discussions, and that that makes me feel better about the process. And of course, I wasn't familiar with the process, but with the leadership we have with all our school districts, I'm not surprised that they're working on this and on top of it. But I guess I'd want to know from West Dubuque schools, have they involved their unions, teachers union, in the discussion? Has Holy Family involved employees in the discussion, teachers, to get input? So I'm just throwing that out there, and whoever wants to grab it, feel free to do so.
Yeah, Dave, our district leadership has I think she's the chief negotiator for the Western Dubuque Education Association, sits on the district leadership team, and then several members are on committees. So every committee has got representation from the teachers union and some from the support staff union and the Teamsters as well. They're just part of that, and so they sit on that and are well aware of what we're doing.
Thanks, Rick.
This is Marshall Kakutsky. So I can speak to our school and then the other Catholic schools over in the Western Dubuque area. The part of this process is we have to have staff involved because, you know, I'm not an expert on when it comes to medical issues, nor do I want to be one. So, you know, we have our school nurse helping with that, our main person, custodial staff are in. Teachers are talking about how this is going to impact their classroom. So, you know, we need their input in terms of what is it that they need for assistance to make these things work. What is it that they, what are their concerns? How do we move those pieces forward? So the process that the Department of Ed put together with this was to convene a wide group of individuals to kind of be in those steering groups. And then as a lot of the other superintendents, administrators have mentioned, having those subcommittees that have worked more on the specific issues, and then your larger group that brings that information back together.
Thank you.
Tom Beschen, can I talk? This is Patrice.
Yes, thanks, Patrice.
Okay, thank you very much. And just for the superintendents, for an FYI, the incident management team consists of Mary Rose Corrigan, City Health Specialist, Stacy Killian, who is the Director of the VNA, Tom Berger, who is our EMA, and myself. And we have been working at looking for the guidance for the schools to share. And I have been in a lot of communication per email with the 4 nurses, with Sheila and Allie and Jolene and with Beth, as we have been getting information, which has not been much at all. We've also been asking IDPH for guidance, and they did keep telling us it's coming, it's coming. So we received it the same time that the school districts had received it, and it was not what we were expecting, I'll be honest. But we're planning on working with all of the school districts. We were notified just through other people, not through the IDPH, that IDPH is looking at revising the guidance. So we've already sent an email to IDPH asking when that redirection would be coming out. But I know Mary Rose, I was working with Shirley Hortzman and Allie, and the incident management team has learned to divide and conquer. So Mary Rose will be meeting with the Dubuque School District Health and Safety meeting or committee this afternoon. But we are, trust me, staying in tune to the IDPH. We do want those guidance. And what we'll probably do, unless you give us different directive, is work through our school nurses. We have been, we had our first webinar with IDPH regarding the community college for the testing component. If any of the college students were to display symptoms, would the incident management team have collection kits on hand to do the testing? Or if the colleges have school nurses based there, could we assist them? So they're still looking at a lot of those components as well. But trust me, we will definitely be involved with any of the positive cases or any guidance changes that might come to be. Our contact tracing is still done through the Iowa Department of Public Health. But even with our first conversation with the community college, IDPH has already asked the incident management teams if they can assist if needed in those cases, because we know our county the best. And yes, we definitely will be involved with all of that. So as we hear more, trust me, we will be getting that information out as well. But I just want to say, don't ever hesitate to give Tom or Stacy or Mary Rose or myself a call or an email, because we're going through the process the same as you are. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess with that discussion, we are anxiously awaiting a revision from Iowa Department of Public Health and the Iowa Department of Education. We will put it back on our agenda for Wednesday night, and hopefully we'll have more information by then. But until then, we're confident that the school districts are moving forward with their plans, and We just thought it was appropriate to have this discussion in light of the, I'll go on record as saying, disappointing recommendation that we received last week.
Tom Besh and Dave Baker here, and maybe this is a little bit editorial, but you know, I think I appreciate that our school districts, all of them, are working on this and have been working on it for weeks and weeks. Looking at the document put out by the state, if you didn't want to take a position or take action, I think I could have put that together in a couple hours, and just basically they're just saying it's you know, wild west, let everybody do what they're going to do. I just don't see any guidance. I think they would have just been better off saying, hey, it's local control, do your own thing, because I don't really see much in there. I'll probably get some nasty grams for that, but I'm not one that's known to keep my mouth shut when I see something that you know, that sometimes I believe doesn't measure up. But I will ask, does anybody know if at the state level was there representatives, employee representatives involved in the process? Were there teachers, support staff, administrators involved at the state level? Because it just doesn't appear that that's the case to me. If anybody can answer that, that'd be great. If they can't, then I think that tells us the answer.
Not from Dubuque, Dave. We received the guidance the same time everybody else did on Thursday.
Okay.
No, my understanding of this is that this came from the Department of Education and the Department of Public Health. On previous guidance that we've received, it has to also run through the governor's office because of the health emergency. So that question probably could be best answered by contacting someone that's the Department of Education or Public Health.
Okay, thank you.
This is Supervisor McDonough, and I've known know more about this after 37 minutes than I have previously, and something that concerns me. I heard one of our superintendents or a principal allude to some concern about what this board might do, recognizing you've been at your readiness plans for many weeks, and they are due in fact on Wednesday. So I'm speaking for myself, but I don't see the role of the supervisors to direct you to do something differently than what you're doing. You are the key folks in charge of the health of your employees, the students. You know that best. And I think I'm living a life situation right now that makes me feel very personally connected to situations you describe. We are self-isolating because we have a granddaughter who developed a very bad cold and a cough on Sunday, and we've been providing some significant care. So when you unpack that, you realize that a cough from a preschooler now has several individuals scrambling, waiting for test results. So how you go through this has ripple effects that are significant for our community and our employees community-wide. So I just want you to know that I'm not intending to make long-range decisions, and I don't think it's the Board of Health's position, quite honestly, either, to make decisions about what you are attempting to do. If you need us to give direction, if you need us to be partners, we are willing to do that, but you are led by your own elected boards of citizenry to respond to as well. So let us know what you need, but I wouldn't be in favor of being called to a Monday morning meeting wondering what the Board of Supervisors are going to enact or change direction for you. So just would like to leave it there, that I'd rather be a partner. I don't see us as an enforcer or a decision maker.
This is Supervisor Baker. I agree 100% with Supervisor McDonough. I will say this, I don't think, I also don't, I'm not, excuse me, if some folks are on the meeting from the schools because they thought that might be the case, I'm okay with that. The fact that we're having a public discussion on this, and this may have been the first public forum that came up since the document was released. So I think it benefits everyone in Dubuque County to have this discussion. Again, I think I agree with Ann McDonough that it's not our role to, to tell you anybody what to do in this case, but to let you know that we are very interested in how our children, in my case, grandchildren, will be, if and when they'll be going back to school. And but if that feeling was out there, I'm glad it did get mentioned. And if that's how we got people on the involved in the discussion, I can live with that. Supervisor Wickham, any comments?
I do, but I would like to, if the chair of the health or supervisors would ask if there's any other comments from those attending, I'd be interested in hearing those first.
Are there any, this is Tom Bashan. Are there any other comments from the public?
I'll be brief then. I appreciate everybody coming here and having a dialogue. As I said earlier, I'm very interested in understanding what you're trying to accomplish and then seeing how we could help. I'm sure you've been your ears been tugged by teachers, by parents, by administrators, and probably even your students as well. And so those are probably the wise, along with your school board. Those would be the people I would be listening to first. The county does have a role, and the county's role is health. Your role is education. And so one of the roles we do have is the health and well-being of the population of Dubuque County. And so to that end, my message to all of you is if there's anything you believe that the county, whether it's the Board of Health or directly the supervisors, can help you related to the health and well-being of your staff and all of your constituents that revolve around the school districts, let us know. That's what we're here for. We have your tax dollars available at your request for health and wellness during this COVID-19 pandemic. And so know that you're not on alone, and we're here to help you. And so that would be my first request. My only change for the plans I would have, and then take this under strong consideration. I heard Stan mention that August 13th was the opening day of school. That's also the Field of Dreams, Major League Baseball, first Major League Baseball game ever in the state of Iowa. If we could have a day of celebration for baseball only, for relationships, and obviously for following your dreams or just having a catch in the backyard with your mom and dad, that's what I would advocate for. That's my only request. Thank you for attending. Appreciate it.
Okay, Dave, this is Tom Bashan. I guess at that point I would relinquish the floor and turn it back to your normal agenda.
Thank you, Chair Bashan. All right, we'll go back to the first item on the agenda is the work session to discuss COVID-related issues. Of course, invite everyone to stay on for our meeting and discussion. We'll at this point turn it over to Patrice Lambert for her report. Patrice is our director of our Dubuque County Health Department.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I should have said that earlier. I apologize. Just a real quick update. I'll start with our dashboard with the coronavirus. Dubuque County has tested individuals into the number of 10,085 so far. And again, we are really stressing people to complete that testiowa.com survey. Kelly McMahon with the Epic Health and Wellness Center will continue to do the testing this week. We have not heard of an end date as of yet, so we're hoping that Test Iowa will continue throughout the summer. And but we don't know that, so we're just encouraging people to complete why we still have that available here in Dubuque County. And also, I know other testing is going on again with the Union Family Pharmacy, Southwest Healthcare across the river, and I believe there is a site that's going to be open in Illinois for this week as well, and there's no requirements. And I do not believe you have to be a resident of Illinois on that. So again, we still have lots of testing opportunities, and we just encourage people to get on that testiowa.com and complete the survey. We have had 501 individuals that have tested positive. We've had 251 of those individuals that have totally recovered, and our death rate still remains at 22. So again, we encourage people to go on that dashboard because that is updated a few times during the course of the day. Our numbers, as you probably noticed this past weekend, stayed right around 8 positive. So we didn't see a huge spike in any of those numbers. And I guess I would probably turn it over to Stacy Killian to give us an update on the specialty care. And I don't know if Joe is on or if Stacy can give us an update on the jail as well. Is Stacy on? Is Stacy on?
Patrice, she was on earlier. I do not see her on our Zoom meeting at the present moment.
Okay, I can just briefly explain that we do have a VNA communicable disease nurse that is working on a daily basis with specialty care and also with the nurses in our jail, going through all of the isolation guidelines, the any testing that was done, what the results were, and they will continue to have daily contact with specialty care and jail until we can say that we have all negative cases. So if Stacy does jump on, if she does have additional information, I will let her explain that. And then I would also ask Ed if he could give any update on our isolation shelter.
If we could just pause there a minute. If we
Oh,
unmute
sure.
number
I'm sorry.
4, Patrice, if we unmute number 406, we're going to get Sheriff Kennedy to give us some
Oh,
information.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
This is Dawn. I do not see the number 406. Oh, there, I see it now. I'll unmute Sheriff Kennedy.
All right, this is Joe. So just to give an update on what we have going on upstairs, I spoke to the jail administrator and the jail nurse this morning. During this entire period, we have been fortunate where we have not had any of the inmates experience any really significant symptoms of COVID. Most of them have been asymptomatic or just complaining of body aches. We haven't had a single person register any type of a temperature outside of normal ranges. So, and right now, today, we're at day 10 after our initial phase of testing. So inmates that are not showing any signs or not having any complaints of any symptoms are going to be allowed a little bit more movement within the housing units now. And eventually, we will get them out of the medical segregation units. We did a second round of testing on Saturday. The tests we were advised were received at the state hygienic lab Sunday night. So we're waiting for those results. The inmates that we tested were the remaining inmates of the housing units where the initial group were positive from. So we're trying to see how many other people ended up being exposed outside of the group that we had on the initial round of testing. Other than that, we're working with the courts to try to get more people released. We don't really have a lot of people that are really eligible out of the 100 or so people that are in the jail. There's about 8 people being held simply on misdemeanors with no other charges. We have 31 total people that are being held on misdemeanor charges, but a lot of them have other things going on with either out of state or out of county warrants, other probation violation things that they're waiting on, parole violations, things like that. So they probably, it's not very likely that they'll be eligible for release, but the 8 to 10 people that we have that are just simply here on misdemeanors, we're taking a second look at those people to see if they really need to be here. So that's kind of where we're at. We're just waiting now to hear back from the state lab to see what our second round of testing is going to look like and go from there.
Sheriff Kennedy, Dave Baker, I've been contacted by citizens, and I'd ask you to clear this up because it seems that and I don't know if the Telegraph Herald is on here, but they reported that there were no, one day that there was no staff infections, and then they had basically a couple days later a headline that this all started with staff, and I think people are confused. You're the expert. I'd ask you to please clarify this so that people have know what's going on.
So we had 2 staff members that were exposed. It was about a month ago. The Dubuque Police Department arrested an individual, and the individual resisted. It took several city officers to get the person brought in. Every one of those city officers that dealt with that person ended up having COVID, and then the deputy that booked that person in and the deputy that released him, they also were exposed. That was about a month ago. What we're finding out through some intel out of the jail is that people in the housing units had been feeling ill for several weeks, but no one wanted to say anything because they didn't want to go into medical segregation. So we don't know 100% for sure now after hearing this if we had somebody in quarantine and they lied on the medical questionnaire to get out of quarantine, and then got themselves into general population, or if it was one of those initial staff members that exposed the inmates. So, unfortunately, we're dealing with a population of people that sometimes put their own needs above other people's, and so you get situations like that where initially we thought that it was probably our staff member that exposed them, but it very well could have been one of these other inmates that exposed them and was asymptomatic and got themselves into a housing unit, or maybe they just had some minor symptoms and wanted to get out of quarantine and go into a housing unit, and and they went ahead and exposed everybody. So at this point, this is information we just got this morning. So, you know, at this point, I don't know exactly how the exposure happened. It quite possibly could have been a staff member that exposed them, or it could have been one of these other inmates that were, like I said, either asymptomatic or not truthful on the medical questionnaire.
Thank you for the explanation, Sheriff Kennedy.
Yep.
All right. We're still in the work session to discuss COVID related issues. And we were talking about the Dubuque Law Enforcement Center. Are there any other questions for Patrice Lambert or Sheriff Kennedy? And do we know if Stacy Killian is back on? I'm not seeing her.
We have a question for the sheriff from chat. The question is from a member of our Board of Health. Are all new inmates tested?
So we started testing the new inmates when they're put into 14-day quarantine, and then before they are going to be released from the 14-day quarantine, they are going to be required to take a test now. The problem we're running into is just getting tests. When we initially found out we had a problem, our nursing staff called down to the state hygienics lab to get tests. They said now that we were considered a hot spot, we could get as many tests as we wanted. At that time, we were trying to be respectful and only take the amount of tests that we needed. So that was when we got our original round of 150 tests. Last week when we called to get more tests, they kind of balked and said, well, we just sent you 150 tests. And, you know, we said, well, yeah, we have more people up here and we're getting more inmates almost daily. So we have more people to test, and we had to work through some other channels to get some tests. But I would like to take an opportunity to make sure that I publicly recognize Patrice Lambert and Stacy Killian for the help that they gave us in getting things tracked down and squared away. And Test Iowa was also helpful to us. So thanks to them.
Any other questions for Sheriff Kennedy?
None from me.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff Kennedy.
No problem.
All right. We will move on in our meeting here. Emergency management team update. So do we have Tom Berger on?
Yeah, Dave, I'm here. Tom Berger, Dubuque County Emergency Management. But the thing, one of the things we're working on, the state is looking at placing a 30-day stockpile of PPE in each county. So regionally, it is going to Lynn County. So we're working on getting that up here for the next surge. So we'd have that for our medical community and first responders. So how much that is at this point, we don't know exactly, but it'll be quite a substantial amount to carry us through the next surge, or when it returns this fall or next year or 2 years or whenever it is. So we're working out here to identify some storage areas. Some of the PPE, obviously, we can't just put out into the big bay area because of the humidity. It gets to the boxes and the equipment. So kind of working through that. So our requests from the healthcare facilities are still there. They're just not as frequent as they are. So hopefully their supply chains are opening up somewhat. I know they're still limited in the amount they get. So from what I'm hearing from my contacts with the healthcare facilities.
Tom, Dave Baker, you and I have had some discussions on this. So it sounds like the governmental agencies, the public sector, if you will, may be getting to a point of comfort with regard to PPE, but the area that we're still deficient in is the public sector, private sector businesses. The supply chain apparently hasn't caught up in the private sector yet. Is that, would you agree that's seems to be the issue at this point?
I think so, and just I guess I have no confirmation on it, but my guess is that if the just from what we heard on Friday and the government, what the state is getting, they're scaling back their National Guard deliveries quite a bit now, and getting the stockpile out to the regions that we'll be able to access. So I'm assuming, and from what the vice president said on Friday about PPE requests, and we found this out in May or April and in late March when we tried to acquire some of the masks and stuff. They said that from our local vendors that they'd be ready to be shipped from China, and then the federal government would, the Chinese government would acquire that and reroute it to the federal government. So maybe if that's not happening now, some of the local vendors will be able to start supplying the PPE, and it'll be a better chain or more reliable supply chain for the healthcare facilities, what the hope is.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Do we have questions for Tom Berger?
None for me.
And from me.
Okay, and Tom, I just wanted to, and you know, when you go to thank people, so I'm gonna try to make this inclusive. When we needed masks, you know, on the business side, I think folks like Doug Dolter from Dubuque Mattress and many others stepped up and were making masks. But also we had people making masks from their homes. And personally, Roxanne Schmitz made hundreds of masks. And there were many others throughout the county that just made thousands and thousands of masks for folks, and truly a team effort. We may need their services again, depending on where this spike goes. But I didn't want to, I did want to mention that we, in you know, there's Iowa Nice. I think there's Dubuque County tough and with a great work ethic. And I think that really helped us work through our the main spike and put us in the position we're in now, where it's, at least in our area, it appears to be slowing somewhat, other than the nursing home and the jail. So I don't know if you have any comments.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of donations immediately from businesses and individuals, you know, with N95s, and that was the only way we were going to get through this, you know, because immediately we couldn't get any of the medically certified N95s, and, you know, we were able to use the KN95s that we were able to get. So yeah, but you know, a lot of the people stepped up and donated stuff, and that's very definitely appreciated.
All right, anything else for Tom Berger? All right, let's go to Sunnycrest Administrator Chris Kirsch for her update.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chris.
So we have gone through testing. We tested 27 residents. 26 of those results have returned, all negative. We tested on Thursday and Friday 50 employees. 12 of those staff members have returned their results. All have been negative. I expect more of those results to return today. In isolation level 1, we have 10 residents. That isolation level is for those residents returning from from hospitalizations or from essential appointments. They have to stay there for 14 days just to be monitored. Level 2 isolation are for those residents who are having symptoms. We do not have any residents in that isolation area. And level 3 isolation are for residents who have been diagnosed with COVID, and we have no residents in that isolation area. We are still in phase 1 because of our positive last Wednesday. We'll stay in phase 1 for 14 days, which would be July 8th. And yes, that is highlighted on my calendar. Tomorrow at noon, IDPH is having a phone call or a webinar with all of us. And the title of it is Easing PPE Restrictions for the phasing. So hopefully we have some easing of this PPE restriction that they've put on us. And
Thank you.
it.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions for Chris Kirsch?
No.
Chris, I know that you deal in the, for supplies, you deal in the private sector for your supplies, you know, because I sign claims and I see them come through. We have, you know, like Medline here, we get equipment from them and others. Is there discussion about when, you know, things might return to quote normal or pre-COVID-19 as far as you know, the gowns and other PPE?
No, we here at Sunnycrest are still on allocation, and that's probably a 13-month look back of what we had previously ordered. So there are things that are in our, like face shields. In the previous 13 months, we've never ordered face shields, and the phasing guidelines tell us that we have to have FDA approved face shields. Well, we have homemade face shields. We've never ordered face shields. So we're still on allocation. So I'm not sure when the manufacturers or the warehouses will get supplies. Maybe I defer to Tom Berger on that one. I'm not sure if he's heard, but the allocations are a 13-month look back.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Dave, Tom Berger, I just want to make one comment if I can.
Sure.
Yeah, on that, and we're still, even though the state is, you know, slowing down their delivery and releasing some of the National Guard, we can still help the long-term care facilities that are still in that phase 1 and they can't get the PPE. So we're still able to do that. We're still able to put in requests for PPE that we would need to provide that support for the phase 1. You know, it's just that now when I order by noon, it's usually here the next day. It might be more on a, you know, 4 to 5 days out before we get it, depending on when their truck will be coming. So we'll still be able to support Chris and all the other long-term care facilities.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any other questions for Chris Kirsch or Tom Berger? Okay, hearing none. The next item we've already tackled. That was the Board of Health update for the school reopening guidance, but I'll go back to Chair Beshen, Tom Beshen, to see if there's any other Board of Health issues, or if you want to put in a plug for your upcoming meeting Wednesday.
I think we've covered plenty this morning. We are meeting at 5:30 on Wednesday evening. We will be discussing the mask, the wellness, and hopefully have some new guidance from the Iowa Department of Education to take a look at. So we'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Tom.
Chair Baker, this is Ed Raber.
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
Supervisor McDonough had earlier asked about the isolation shelter, and we got onto another topic quickly. I just wanted to report back that I had provided the city with sort of a framework of issues, and they incorporated that. It took a little while, but Thursday evening they sent a city sent a rough draft of a memorandum of understanding back to us, back to me, and I forwarded that on to the team of people that had been addressing that, which includes Supervisor McDonough, as well as the incident management team and some other partners, including Don Sherman and Stella Rundy. So we got that, and we'll be working to comb through that. I failed to mention CJ May, the county attorney, but we'll be going through that. Hopefully we'll be able to meet very shortly here and have that as an agenda item for consideration for the next Board of Supervisors meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Thanks for the update. Okay, any other questions, anything for Ed Raber? And we usually give any of the Board of Health members a chance to speak. I've been asked, to make sure that we have plenty of public input, and I always have tried to do that. So I guess if there's someone from the Board of Health or the public that would like to comment on the overall COVID-19 or Board of Health issues, now would be the time. Okay, we'll move.
I think Diane Pape-Freiberger has the clap signal there.
All right, if we could unmute Diane Pape-Freiberger, please.
Thank you. I am unmuted now. I didn't have just a raise the hand. I either could clap or give you a thumbs up. But so I do have a question as far as governance of events that happen within Dubuque County. And I have sent emails out to individuals related to this. We're continuing with an increase in number of COVID-19 positive cases within Dubuque County in different areas of the county. And it's my concern when there are large groups that are gathering, that's a possibility for a spread of COVID-19. When who oversees this? If you're going to have a large event, do they contact public health department and have them go through the mitigation with them? I just would like to make sure that the guidances that have been directed by the state are being followed so that we don't have an increase in cases at some of these large events that are being scheduled in the future in Dubuque County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Any questions, comments for Diane? Okay. I want to go back to chat. Sheriff Kennedy is indicating he would also like to thank Ed Raber for helping secure housing for one of our employees who needed a place to stay and self-isolate due to high-risk individuals in their home. So thank you, Ed Raber from Sheriff Kennedy. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move.
Supervisor Wickham, if I could jump in, maybe just commenting related to Diane's question. Legally, I don't really know exactly where your question falls, but I think from an overall scope and an overall opinion, related to policy, direction, I believe that would be the Board of Health's responsibility to state things they believe would make the public more healthy, more safe. That's why you're assembled. You know, it's why they have a citizen body, and if you review the state code, it talks specifically about those responsibilities. So I wouldn't hesitate to have those discussions, but we've kind of come full circle. So if you go back to our April meetings, I was an advocate for more local control and an advocate for, you know, establishing a more local control related to what was open and what was closed, and that did not carry with my colleagues. And so we're right back to the same conversation, whether you just want to delegate responsibility to the governor, who basically says, you know, people can do what they please, or you'd want to have some more oversight and guidance. So it's a very good question, and hopefully you'll have some good dialogue at the Board of Health on that.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Wickham. I will remind Supervisor Wickham and others that may be participating that we did have a legal opinion from our own county attorney that we did not have the right to implement orders, that responsibility falls with the governor. And you know, I think the term I used at that time was I wasn't wanting to get in a legal tussle with our own attorney. That doesn't seem to make sense. So, but I certainly respect and understand Supervisor Wickham's position on that. So, okay, any other comments or questions, concerns? All right, we'll move to the next item on the agenda. We have a work session to discuss Food Policy Council FY21 grant recommendations. Like to, let's see, can somebody help me as to who's gonna speak on this?
And if we can get that document up on the screen, that'd be wonderful. The document that was forwarded to us related to the grant recipient list, that would be very helpful.
And Michaela Freiberger is on for representing the council.
Okay, I do see her now.
It would be
Okay.
helpful to me, Michaela, if you would start with the mission of the grants. It helps me to see your decisions based upon what it is that your mission was in taking grant applications. Can't hear Michaela at all.
Nor can I.
Is this better?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All
Yes,
right.
We can hear you,
Good
Michaela.
morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Supervisor McDonough, for your inquiry. And I think it is very important to showcase what this grant process is utilized for. And so our council's mission is to integrate the health and well-being of our community and to establish a more resilient food system, and that it is just and equitable throughout Dubuque County. And so our, grant process really takes into consideration those who are going to be providing us with touch points and some feedback that could be utilized for our policy recommendations, continuing to find out where we need to outreach in our community and provide that education, and then also those who have strategic partnerships, not only within the major city here of Dubuque, but also throughout Dubuque County. We really want to see that there is that network that is healthy network and that's building towards that resilient food system. So we really ask those members in our community who have some missions that may align with our actual mission and various components of our food systems to showcase their projects to us. And some of them are expanding projects, some of them are establishment of projects. And we really look to partner with those who are in our community just as a general, kind of overarching goal. And this year, as we did last year, we've had non-for-profits that have demonstrated their ability to connect not only to one other community partner, but look to build partnerships throughout the community as it relates to Dubuque County and building a local resilient food system that is just and equitable.
Michaela, I know you sent us a more detailed description of each of these this morning.
Yeah.
At about 9:30. And I know that you had expected that to be to us much before that time, but I appreciate that you've given that to us to see.
All of the comments that you received from these projects are the same sort of comments that we have sent to the projects as well. We do have some of the recipients that had previously allocated funds towards tax, and we do not believe that money from the county should be utilized in that navigation. However, we did make a recommendation that they change those dollars and focus on purchasing local foods, as that has been a consistent message of ours, and especially more recently focusing on helping our farmers in our Dubuque County region.
Okay, are there questions, other questions for Michaela regarding the grant recommendations? Okay, hearing none. This does say for the FY21 grant recommendations that this is a discussion, so don't know if any action is needed or if this needs to come up on another agenda. Somebody might explain.
Dave, this is Dawn. If you are going to accept their recommendations, we can do a resolution for Monday. If you do not have any changes to their recommendations, then you can formally approve it on the 6th.
Okay.
I would be in favor of that.
Yeah, I would as well. So, so it'll be next meeting would be July 6th, Michaela, with a resolution for and formal action.
Thank you. I will share with our grantees this information. We do have some that are on here, so they would be receiving notification then on July 6th of their formal adoption of the award amount, as well as a press release will be going out on the 6th as well after your meeting.
Thank you, Michaela. Thank you for all the great work that you and the Food Policy Council are doing throughout Dubuque County.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on. The agenda. Next up, we have a work session with our county engineer, Anthony Bargett. We have first item is an update for the Northwest Arterial John Deere Road Corridor Project number HDPC 031 110 6B31 with Chandra Ravada from ECIA.
Okay, good morning. This is Anthony.
Hi, Anthony.
Chandra, hopefully he'll be unmuted here as well, so he'll be discussing alongside myself. But just wanted to give the board an update on, I guess, a phone conversation we had last week with Federal Highway Administration, City of Dubuque, and Iowa DOT. So we gave Federal Highway an update of where we're at with the consultant selection process. And in fact, we have interviews with the 3 consultants tomorrow. So we'll be going through that process tomorrow. We wanted to give the Federal Highway Administration, Michael Kane, he's the representative that was on the phone call last week. Wanted to give him an idea of where we're at between, you know, the city of Dubuque, Iowa DOT, and Dubuque County with partnering in this project and using the Northwest Arterial as a matching project for this John Deere build grant project. City of Dubuque and Iowa DOT are finalizing their transfer jurisdiction arrangement, and I think coming to some final numbers as to both sides agreeing to what that's going to cost. Out of that discussion, Federal Highway Administration threw out that we could keep going down the option we're going down, which is including this as one big project. They did state that, and it sounds like it's a fairly easy process, that we could split, or how did he say it, uncouple the Northwest Arterial from the John Deere roads, and not have to use the Northwest Arterial as a matching grant or matching part of this grant. So that's where I want to kind of bring Chandra in. He's going to have some financials to pull up on the screen here to kind of explain that process, and wanted to get your idea on this. At first I was a little taken back by it, and I wanted to make sure that we weren't going to have a lot more cost put on us with the match. But it seemed to be a pretty good idea. So I'm going to turn it over to Chandra right now to kind of go over some of these numbers.
Thank you, Chair Baker and the supervisors for this opportunity. I just want to make sure that you're all able to see my screen.
Yeah, I can see it, Chandra.
Okay. Thank you. So what I will do is I'll explain what we submitted to Federal Highway in the build grant and what we got and what's the discussion is happening right now. So this is the budget we gave to Federal Highway when we submitted for the build grant, where if you see in this line item where we have the Northwest Arterial, we had $3,730,000 for Northwest Arterial, where we want to use it as a match. Now the question is, as this is a rural county project, there's no match requirement, but we use the Northwest Arterial to make the application more strong with Federal Highway. So doing that way, our match split is like 48% non-federal to 51% federal. That's how we submitted the application. So with the way things are going with City of Dubuque and Iowa DOT, the concern what Federal Highway had is the county doesn't have the authority over the jurisdiction of Northwest Arterial because it's not a county road. And on top, there are a couple of components where the DOT wants to do it by themselves. So this complicated the process a little bit. So the DOT gave an opportunity for Dubuque County to uncouple the project. And when they uncouple the project, then we misunderstood that we will be asked to provide a 48% match, what we submit in the application. But Federal Highway came back and said, we don't need to. The requirement is 0, but if we come up with a 20% match, that will be, I think, 99%, the headquarters will say yes to that. So with that saying, if we take the Northwest Arterial out of the equation completely, so if you see my numbers here, so if you take the Northwest Arterial out, the project will become 6.4 million, where Federal Highway will be coming to the table with 5.16 around. So the county's match will be 1.2 million. Now, if you remember, the county already got $1 million from DMAT. So you're already covered with the DMAT. So you will be short by 288,000. Basing on the discussions what we had with the DOT and Federal Highway, this 288,000 should be met by the county either way, with or without Northwest Arterial. So it doesn't make a difference for the county. Now we are trying to find other sorts of funding from Iowa DOT, like safety grants and clean air attainment grants to fill that gap. But in worst case situation, that's what county might need to come to the table, like 288,000. So doing this way, then it becomes more single project just with John Deere improvements. So that will make counties' life more easy, not getting involved into Northwest Arterial and project construction and designing process of that, and financially floating it before getting reimbursed by the DOT and the city. So this is what we want to show you today. At 20% match, the county's contribution should be 1.28 million, but you already got $1 million from DMAT, so it's 288,000 is what we are looking at. But we will try our level best to subsidize that funding with some Iowa DOT funds.
Yeah, and in my opinion, and even if we had to come up with that $288,000 ourselves, I think that's well worth it, to not have to deal with the Northwest Arterial design portion, administration of that project, and complicate this grant possibly in the future with Federal Highway. I think it can be done, but there's just so many things that we need to watch out for that just makes this thing more complicated than it needs to be.
Questions for Anthony or Chandra?
I have a few.
Go ahead, Ann.
We're interviewing tomorrow, and that interview and our request for proposals includes the improvements to the Northwest Arterial. How are we handling that?
So tomorrow when we're interviewing, the consultants will ask that question saying, will the Northwest Arterial be part of the project? That's where we are referring it to the City of Dubuque. So Bob Sizzle from City of Dubuque will be in the interviews. So City of Dubuque is just having some internal discussions with their staff, either to use the consultant or not to use the consultant. So even though they use the consultant, they want to, move the project a little bit behind. They want the John Deere project to go first. So the city will make a call on that. As of now, we don't have a definitive answer on that.
Interviews start tomorrow at 10 a.m. and we're asking individuals to, they put in a request and we scored people. I mean, I'm concerned about, I mean, you're the experts, but strikes me as pretty confusing. We're not going to ask questions of them about the city project. Does that mean that the city engineer is going to sit in on our interviewing team? Are we hiring one consultant for the county portion, another consultant for the city?
So the way we wrote the RFP, we wrote the Northwest Arterial as a supplement, stating that if the Northwest Arterial project gets involved, then whoever is the consultant who gets selected for John Deere will get that contract. But it's at the end, we said, if the Northwest Arterial is not involved in the project, then it's just John Deere. And we clearly stated in the RFP. So whoever is the consultant, they know that they're getting into the project for sure for John Deere, but not sure if the Northwest Arterial will be part of it or not. So,
is this the final answer from the federal government? I wasn't able to be on this phone conference, but it seems like it's a pretty significant difference to me in terms of what I understood the project to be and what our role was.
This does not have to be the final answer. They've given us two options here. We can either continue down the the path that we've been going down with the city and the DOT as partners, or we can totally uncouple ourselves using a white paper process is what they call it, and it's literally like a one-page application explaining how we are going to separate from the Northwest Arterial. So they've given us both options. I was confused at first, and I was not convinced that this was a good idea because I was afraid of the match requirement. But they reiterated that no, you don't have to come up with that 48% match. You can ask for 0% match if you would like, although it's going to look better if you can throw in 20% and more than like Chandra said, 99% sure that it's gonna go through DC with flying colors if you show a 20% match.
Does this keep us on our tight time schedule?
Yeah, so I would say that if we can uncouple this project, and it sounds like this white paper, they make a decision on this pretty quickly because it's such a short paper to review. that this really allows us to make sure we stay on our timeline, just because, you know, there's some uncertainty as to when the city really wants to start this Northwest Arterial project.
Correct. Yeah, that was already becoming apparent. I think we've worked together well with the city. I'm pleased to see a solution that lets us, it frees us up to complete this grant within our ability to control it. Wouldn't you agree, Anthony? It looks like this gives us a far greater ability to be nimble to complete the grant on time.
Yes. We, you know, again, we could have done it the other way, but it feels, it's just funny to me that if I had to say that I have control over the Northwest Arterial by, let's say, 28 agreement with the city, yeah, it's kind of skirting a little bit. I'm not really in control of it, you know. So this kind of clears that out of the way and really puts us in focus of our roads and what's ours.
And so one more time, how will we get the, I know we got $1 million from DMATs. I was present for that discussion, 288,000. And just one more time, how we think we're going to come up with that. So we're not coming back asking for, maybe we will have to ask for some county budget assistance, but where do we think that's going to come from?
So Chandra is going to help us apply for Icap grants and highway safety improvement grants. And Chandra can talk a little bit about that here. So I think we have a pretty good shot at those.
So the highway safety grants, they are due August 12th. The maximum we can get in a highway safety grant is, traffic safety grant is $500,000. Then there are Iowa Clean Air Attainment Program grants, where the maximum we can get is like $1 million, but in this project we can say 250 to 300. So if we receive either of those grants, that will cover the match pretty much. And those are state funds. They are swap funds from the state. So they will be counted as a match for the federal money. So
I want to be sure that using those funds for this project doesn't in any way impact budget considerations for like the out on Highway 20 corridor, the issues at Thunder Hills Road. Is that would be a future grant request we might ask for them?
So from the county standpoint, the county will be submitting 2 traffic safety improvement grants, one at Thunder Hills and one for John Deere improvements.
Okay.
Most of the time when we apply for 2, sometimes we got both when we applied in the past. Sometimes if it's tight, then the DOT comes back to the county and say which one you want to get funded. Then the county need to make a decision at the time. The same thing with Iowa Clean Air Attainment Program grants. The Thunder Hills one might be a long shot at for Iowa Clean Air Attainment Program grant, but we'll try to see if we can submit an application there. But we'll be applying for the John Deere portion too. So we'll apply for both locations for both grants and see where we'll get what. So.
Okay. Very good. Well, I appreciate the update. Do you need us to do more than just ask your questions?
So I have the white paper application filled out and Chandra has reviewed it. I can email that over to you guys today so you can review it as well. I guess it'd probably be appropriate if we could have a motion on that and then I could submit that to Federal Highway.
Anthony, this is Jay. And Chandra, thank you for the information. I have a couple questions. One, the first statement, I think the project should be separated. I had made that statement early on. None of us even knew the Northwest Arterial was part of this project until we got the grant. It was wonderful news. So I'm glad we're separating that. That makes sense. If you can send me the language of the contract with the consultants, I want to make sure that's clear. Because you've got some pretty good hefty design fees in there. And, you know, my understanding with all the interviews with the consultants is that the Northwest Arterial was a solid component of that. But if the language states otherwise, then I'll be happy with that. My other question is the original cost breakdown, this spreadsheet. Who created the cost breakdowns for each category? Who did that?
So
who put the numbers in there?
These costs came from County Engineer's Office through IRW. IRW is the consultant for Dubuque County. they did the traffic impact study for the John Deere portion. They gave the breakdowns for each improvement, and that's how we got those breakdowns.
So IIW gave us these numbers?
Yes.
Okay, was not aware of that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Chandra and Anthony, Supervisor Baker here. As you recall, I was involved on the ground floor of this, and it is true that the Northwest Arterial being attached was surprising, as well as some of the trail system connection that was included as well. It's not that it was bad, it was just surprising. And I was pleased that Supervisor McDonough was requested to serve on this committee, and I think her input's been invaluable. And one of the issues we had in our previous discussions was, how the city and was going to handle the Northwest Arterial, how that was going to fit in. If we break that off, we don't have to worry about that. And and I think Supervisor Wickham pointed that out. Seems like this is the direction we ought to be going. And with Supervisor McDonough having been involved in the discussions, it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she's seems comfortable with this and maybe recommending it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but mostly with the trust factor that I have with Anthony, Barjat, and Chandra, if you're recommending that this is the direction to go, and sounds like you've had some of the same concerns that we've had, if this is what you're recommending, that means a lot to me. You are the experts. So I guess if you want to reiterate that, it sounds like I didn't really hear any negative for this. The positive would be we don't have to worry about the dealings, the goings on between the city and the state about the Northwest Arterial.
That's correct. Yeah, I would recommend that we move in this direction, and then we don't have to set up different jurisdictions here or different phases of this project to monitor city and county.
Okay, I think
I have one more question, Sheriff, I can sort out. And so can you talk a little bit about the public process from here on out, if there's going to be a public process? I know there's going to be a whole host of people that aren't real excited about a signal and turn lanes on Highway 52 and John Deere West. I think it is a safety issue there, so I am an advocate for controlled intersections. But tell me about the public process just related to the design and the input that the public may be able to have.
So once we go through the selection process, we will have a consultant on board with the supervisor's approval, and we'll have a contract in place. What the consultant will do, first thing, is to collect information. In this case, Dubuque County is doing the survey, so that will help them with some time there. So they'll get the survey results, the land survey, and the plats and all that, and they'll collect information from our office and the DOT and all that with the right-of-way and all that. After that, they will come up with they will meet with the supervisors as well as the county engineer to see what are your thought process, what's your expectation. Once that's done, then they will start opening it to public to see, here is what we are thinking, what do you guys think? Because there are already some concept drawings done with IIW on the project, so they might start with that. The consultant might develop their own. And once that's done, they will open it to public, and public will start providing input. Basing on the input from public, they will change the design and come to the supervisor saying, here is the final design. our preliminary design concept we are recommending, and basing on that, the supervisors say, yes, we agree with that. And then they'll start doing the next process, like getting it designed and go through the final design process and so on. So obviously there'll be public because this is federal aid project, public input is needed on the project and it should be documented. So there'll be public input process. Now, how will it how will it be advertised? It's up to county engineer. And similar, other projects what we worked, there are a couple of things what the consultants did. They had small groups. If they're business group, they met with the business group. If there's some interesting trail members, they met with the trail members and so on and so forth. Then they also met with general public. So we will look into something like that. Maybe we might have a meeting with John Deere one-on-one. Then we might have meetings with county conservation one-on-one. Then we might open it to public and have public input from anyone. And if the supervisors think like saying there are other groups we need to meet, we'll look into that to see how we can accommodate them. So.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Very good.
Okay, I'm looking at the agenda. I think for today, I think the best we can do is establish consensus on this. And then Anthony, we would have to follow that up, I believe, next Monday with formal action. I am looking at, it says update for the Northwest Arterial John Deere Road Corridor. So I think consensus would be the order of the day for this issue. So, I'll go first. I would support this. Especially in that it answers one of our questions that we had a concern with, and it's recommended by Anthony and Chandra. And I guess I'll turn it over to Supervisors McDonough and Wickham for their input.
I think we should proceed.
I concur.
All right. We have our consensus, and we can, Anthony, you can get with Don Sherman and make sure this shows up on next Monday's agenda.
Sounds good. I'll take care of that.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you for all your good work. And again, as I said, thank you, Ann, for your help working on this committee. Okay, we do have another item under county engineer. There's action granting extension of RCTP grant for the city of Sageville, giving the county time to pay the claim. And Anthony, do you want to give explanation for this?
Sure. So this was a fiscal year 18 project, and they went, 1 year went by, or actually 2 years went by, and then they asked for an extension. And now we're coming up on July 1st, and we're getting past that approved extension. So this is going to be another ask of a 1 year extension. And as I understand it, their contractor is supposed to be on site pretty soon here if they haven't been there already. To fulfill this project. They've had some legal issues up to this point, which has delayed this project for quite some time. Now they're to the point where they're going to be able to complete this. And maybe Mary's online here too, and she can kind of give her input. But my recommendation would be that we give them another extension past July 1st, allowing us to pay for that claim once it comes through.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Mary. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm in the boardroom, so I'm not on a phone, I'm on the microphone. The city of Sageville, this project is completely done. I had stayed on River City Paving to get it done in this fiscal year, hoping we could get everything wrapped up. And the bill has been paid. And I had asked about the county giving the city the grant money, and I was told that it was not in the budget. So we have to wait for payment until after July 1st, which is Wednesday for the new fiscal year. So the city has to ask for an extension so the county can pay the claim. So that's what this is about. We don't, personally, the city doesn't need an extension for the project because it's complete. But we have to wait for a new fiscal year to receive payment on the claim. So that's why we're asking for the extension.
Mary, I was glad to see it come back, that you had a solution, and I would support this.
Thank you.
Okay, is Stella Rundy on? I assume she is.
Hi there, I'm here.
Hi. Stella, any input from you on this? I think we're, prepared to move forward on this. I just wanted to see if you had any input and explanation on this.
I believe we discussed this a couple weeks ago. This was a project that's obviously been carried over for a couple years. So we would need to, we didn't have it in the budget for FY20. So with the budget resetting July 1st, I believe that's what Mary's referencing, that we could fund it out of our FY21 budget.
Okay, and this is the small town transportation program that we have. So these funds, it's just a matter of allocating these funds. It's not an impact to the budget, my understanding. This money has been previously allocated, but now needs to be reallocated in this fiscal year. Is that accurate?
That would probably be accurate. I'm assuming it was probably allocated in the FY18, if that's where it's carrying over from, and didn't get reallocated each year as it was extended. So there's fund balance that this would use.
Okay.
Stella, I have a question. Will we need to put this in a budget amendment, or can this be paid out promptly after the 1st?
It can be paid after the 1st. I would look to Anthony to see what other projects are on the horizon and if it's going to affect the need to amend the budget, that budget.
The hardest part to what to anticipate on this is that, each city has 2 years to complete their projects. So, we certainly in fiscal year 21 will have enough budget to handle this. We just won't know until we get further into the year how many cities are completing their projects and submitting bills. So we'll just have to wait at least, probably 3/4 of the year and see where we're at.
And we just allocated or awarded some others going forward for fiscal year 21.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, Anthony D. Baker. So so people who are listening in from the public would understand this. If this money, which was previously allocated, wasn't spent, then it would show up at the end of the fiscal year as balance and in your budget. And so, in other words, it might, some people say, well, we were under budget because we didn't spend all the money that was allocated, but that's, we've had this discussion with other departments. It's the way that it's set up is we can't add to the budget, but if something doesn't get spent, it shows up as a balance at the end of the year. And so this money was allocated, was approved, didn't get spent in the appropriate year, and now it's getting spent a couple of fiscal years later. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, the dollars are there in the fund balance. Now we just have to go through the motion of, making sure it's appropriately in the budget. We have the budget line item to handle this, additional expense on top of the projects you guys are looking at approving pretty soon here.
Okay, thank you.
So then we'll need a resolution for Monday, Mary, to pay out the funds that we owe to Sageville.
I don't believe,
no, you don't.
I don't recall any other resolutions.
No,
Anthony's.
it's already
For other
approved.
towns.
I
Okay,
don't think you need anything.
super. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll look for the claim.
this was approved for FY 18. So I think the approval's already there. It's just a matter of getting it paid. So now it's just a matter of getting a claim paid under the
Correct.
normal process. So,
Yeah, now that we're done with the courts, now we could do the project.
right. Okay.
Thanks, Mary.
All right.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ann.
And this one is on the agenda as action item. So I would entertain a motion to approve the extension of the RCTP grant for the city of Sageville, giving the county time to pay the claim.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Carried 3-0. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ann.
All right, next item on the agenda is item D, work session to discuss and approve FY21 employee wages.
Could I make a motion to recess for 5 minutes?
Of course. There's a motion to recess for 5 minutes. Is there a second? I heard Jay
I
second.
second that.
All in favor of a 5-minute recess, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 5 minutes, back at 12:01. Okay, ready to reconvene after a brief recess? And
I am.
All right. We have next item, item D, work session to discuss and approve FY21 employee wages. And frame the issue, I think we would start with Dawn Sherman, our Human Resources Director.
Thank you, Chair Baker. This will be, if there are going to be any changes to the non-bargaining, an opportunity to have one final discussion regarding the non-bargaining wages for FY21. Again, through the budget process, you had approved a 3% for that. If there are no changes today, then we will put on the salary resolution for Monday, July 6th, and that'll give us direct staff then to be able to implement changes into the payroll system. So if there are no changes approved today, you will see that resolution with 3% wage increase on Monday. So this is just another opportunity if there was additional discussion that you wanted to have, or we will proceed with putting that resolution on for Monday.
This Supervisor Wickham, I thought this potentially was going to be a discussion related to our wage freeze and whether that was allowed under state law. But I don't know if anyone else has gone back to confirm that, but kind of as I mentioned last week with the motion that I supported, is that I'm not sure if we have the legal abilities to change the compensation board recommendations at our own discretion after the fact.
I agree. I think
I don't know.
My understanding is we cannot do that. That's kind of what's come back to me. And that was, I think, even part of the motion, that if it was possible to do that at this late date, we would. If not, I guess then, you know, the past has forced our hand on that.
CJ is putting together a written opinion on that. One of the questions we asked was, can we do it at this time? We know that there are some time deadlines in code. And then if we're not able to do that, would a supervisor be able to request to receive no pay increase individually? And so he is researching that part of it, and he was going to put a written opinion together for us.
To go on, I don't know, Supervisor Wickham, if you have anything else you wanted to lend in the discussion. I was just going to share with my colleagues that since we last met, I have had opportunity to be with 21 other supervisors via, well, a phone conference, where we were discussing through the juvenile detention center process. I asked the question about how are other counties handling wage increases. And so there was some interesting discussion about that. And that's part of formulating the motion I'm prepared to make today, but seems like counties are going forward with maybe some review of what was done in their budget process, but I didn't have any of those other counties indicate that it had been reduced to zero. So, you know, then they're not large metro areas, but that, you know, there was a considerable discussion about the process that they are all going through, as well as supervisors. So, you know, today I am going to propose I knew my 1.5% attempt last week didn't go anywhere, so I would be looking to see if we can form consensus around 2%.
Okay.
Supervisor Wickham, I would still be at the point where I was looking for a wage freeze across the board through many of the organizations, with the exception of Sunnycrest, the Sheriff Department, and the Health Director. So those individuals deal with COVID-19 issues directly, and actually have on a daily basis faced the threat of actually contracting the virus through their work, and others possibly as well. But those are, you know, we're taking care of those people. So I would, restate that I would be interested in looking at a wage freeze and discussing with both bargaining and non-bargaining units related to that. Doesn't mean that it's a forever thing, but I think it's a sign of where we are. While I appreciate the comments about other counties, I don't know if that was the UCC counties you were talking to. Those probably relate a little more than what we do. But in Dubuque County, I know that we have thousands of homes that are facing unemployment, and within roughly 30 days, they will lose their $600 benefit, and thousands of people that own properties and homes in Dubuque will be basically at 40% of their wage or lower related to unemployment. And I think that's a signal that we probably need to follow and mirror the general public at this time and understand our employment responsibilities. And I feel a wage freeze is the most appropriate.
And the difficulty I have with that, as you know, Supervisor Wickham, I was also at 0 last week as part of discussion. But
I'm not sure about that. You were all over the board. You
if I
confused
might
everyone.
continue. Well, it's a confusing situation. I'll agree with you on that. But the situation with regard to going to 0, that doesn't work at this time with the county structure, in my opinion, about the numbers of unions that we negotiate with. And I would remind you that we have negotiations underway. We have open contracts, open negotiations with 2 of our unions, and 0 is not something we're negotiating with them. So to put forth a proposal to 2 unions and then negotiate here in public about going back today, tomorrow, and asking them to look at 0, to me just doesn't seem like it's, I don't think it's a very doable thing. I don't think it's very fair. So, that's my consideration for being at 0. I'm not interested in being at 0 the way you are describing the motions that you've had.
Okay. No, I clearly understand that. I know where we are with our union negotiations because I'm on those meetings with the other 2 supervisors. So I'm very keenly aware of the positioning related to all sides. And I am very clear that I am the only one at a wage freeze.
So I'll make a motion at this time. Again, bargaining, you can do that in discussion if you like. You want to go before I make a motion, Dave?
You go ahead. No?
Make a motion that we go to 2% wage increase for the non-bargaining employees.
I will second that. And now, as chair, I'll open it for discussion. And if it's okay with my counterparts, I'll start with the discussion. I think we have made commitments, and I know many of the commitments were pre-COVID, but we have a large swath of county employees that we've already committed 3% to through the compensation board process. The sheriff and 16 or 17 administrative deputies are getting 3%. And I don't think that's reversible. And I don't want to reverse that. Also, through the collective bargaining process, we have the Sheriff's Deputies Association at 3% on a multi-year contract. And, I think we would be going hand in hand, asking for them to give up their negotiated increase, and they're on the front line. And I know Supervisor Wickham wanted to exclude them, but in the quote Sheriff's Department and at Sunnycrest Manor, there are folks that aren't on the front line, that are behind the scenes. And I don't know how you tell someone who's in the treasurer's office at the courthouse, who potentially are facing the COVID-19, and I'm just using that as an example, and somebody who's in the back office at Sunnycrest Manor, that they should be treated differently. So I think and I give you credit, I think the 2% is a good compromise between the 3 differing positions between the 3 supervisors. And I respect each one of those positions and respect Supervisor Wickham and yourself for holding those positions. So that's why I seconded the motion. I think it's as fair as we can do today. And I think that it recognizes that the entire Dubuque County team is involved in this battle against this coronavirus. Okay, is there any other discussion? And my understanding, Dawn, if I can ask Dawn Sherman, is this applies to the non-represented folks, employees in Dubuque County?
You are correct.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all opposed say nay.
Nay.
It is carried 2-1. And thank you both for your good points and good discussion on this. Okay. We have next up a work session to discuss Veterans Affairs and Election Annex locations. So I guess I'm assuming we have, I see Christy Monk is on here. I'd like to have her unmuted. And Randy Renison. And let's see, is Jenny, I'm assuming Denise Dolan is on here. Yes, she is. So I'll give a little bit of background. We had this discussion pre-COVID-19, and you know, it was there was some activity on this, and it, you know, with the onset of the COVID-19, the pandemic, it kind of got backburnered, and probably appropriately. But I recently was invited to attend and did attend the meeting of the Dubuque County Veterans Commission. And the commissioners have voted 100% that they're in support of this move if we're able to afford it. And so I can report to my counterparts that the commissioners, and I'll let Randy speak on this himself. And I believe Randy Renison is in support of this as well. So I'll, I guess with that, I'll turn it over to Randy, and then we'll get.
If I might, so we have full context. The letter that we're discussing is dated in late February. This was not a work session that previously was held by the Board of Supervisors. This was information that I received for the first time Friday afternoon at 2:30, the letter. So that's not information that was made aware to me. So just so we have context, you know, I'm starting from the beginning, as it would be. So if Randy wants to begin at the beginning.
I believe that we had a discussion on this, and that there were no objections. If we need to go back through tapes, we can do that. But we had a discussion. I'm not saying we took action on this, because I don't believe we did. So, but I don't think it's accurate to say that we have had zero discussions on this, because we have had discussions.
So here we find ourselves today, and I would say to Randy Renison, begin from the beginning, please, with the need.
Of course. And Randy, if you're on, if you want to jump in, and I'll tell you, the genesis of this was veterans talking to me in the community about having the new veterans clinic at the Plaza 20, issues with access to the old jail facility, especially in the winter, but it's not an easy place to get in and out of if you're disabled. And that they use the term one-stop shop. And the Plaza 20 is, level entrances, would be good for people in wheelchairs, walkers, scooters, that type of thing. So that's where the discussion started. And we actually had a tour a few months ago. And, that I believe that the commissioners unofficially took action at that point, and now they've officially are telling us that they would like to move forward. But Randy, I'll turn it over to you. Randy Renison.
Okay, to just backtrack a little bit, I did have 2 staff members that were working up there at the Dubuque Community Outpatient Clinic up there, the new VA clinic, and we would be working up there Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So a lot of veterans up there were coming in asking, if we're going to be moving out there, but unfortunately, since that's a federal side of the house, be a lot of red tape to get into. So we put out, kind of sat down with the commissioners and my staff and came up with the pros and cons of actually moving from this location out to that Plaza 20 location. We also put out on Facebook a request out to all area veterans if they would, what their thought about it was. And actually it came back like 98% of people, veterans actually said that'd be great, because if they had run into issues out there at the clinic, they can just come right over and we can do the paperwork. What's really good about that is we can get these intent to file claims in pretty quickly. Otherwise, when the 2 staff members out there at the clinic would have to do the paperwork, they would have to come all the way back down here, then we would have to mail it. Whereas with our capabilities now, we can actually fax it right from our office to do an intent to file, which gets the claim a start date. But also with the wintertime, a lot of times the city of Dubuque will not clean the streets out in front, even though you ask them. They had a bunch of ice marks out there. Then also I asked about free parking. The only reply I got back was they were going to sell me some bus passes for our veterans to ride the city bus, the Jewel. So that kind of went out the window, even though Cedar Rapids actually offers free parking for our veterans down there. And then it's one level. Currently, if we have veterans that need to go down to our food bank, they have to go down the elevator, and then, depending on how much stuff they grab, then we got to bring it back up. But usually we were able to acquire a cart from the IT department. They had an extra one, so we're able to do a lot of moving that route too. Also, the bathrooms are located downstairs. The steps out front during the wintertime were very, very hazardous. The ramp itself, I mean, luckily our maintenance department kept the ramp pretty cleared. But what was the problem with that, if they're in a wheelchair, once again, the city of Dubuque would not clear that ramp, little sidewalk area right by the alleyway to come into the parking lot. So overall, I think it'd be a lot better fit to just move out there and just give us, good visibility with our area veterans. They could just go right from, the Dubuque CBOC and move right down to our location and even do healthcare claims, because a lot of times they go out there and the CBOC actually sends them down to us with the proper paperwork of 1010 easies to get their healthcare. But we can just do everything, within that area. The only drawback was if we had to get a marriage certificate or a death certificate or a DD 214, we would have to come back down here to grab it. But I've been talking to John Murphy about it. He's coming up with a new program, but I'm not going to step on his toes. He can tell you more about that. But he's able to give us access to them kind of records. That way we can go ahead and they're not certified copies. Every copy we get says veteran use only on it. The VA does accept them. So that really kind of helped us out really good on that one too. So, but we did bring it up, with the commissioners out there. I think it was February. They made a motion out there to continue on with it, but then the coronavirus kicked in. And so it's kind of been in the back burner, but we do have a lot of veterans that when they call or asking when we're moving out there. And I said, well, first we got to have a work session with the Board of Supervisors. So, but I think this would be the first step that we can talk about today. Is that, do you need more information, Ann, or?
Well, Randy, what is the need? I mean, what's the pressing need? Right now, your space is free, correct?
Right. I just, from little rumor mills throughout the county, some departments want to move, and there are some departments that think our location's a lot better for their area of operation. So, I mean, the only reason we would move out there, in my book would be, like I said, be closer to the actual VA health care that we have a good repertoire with. I know here shortly, if you look across the Fisher parking lot, we got the vet center van coming in. Otherwise, we have to pay parking for them since the city won't give us anything for free. So, but luckily the Fisher company is going to let us park the vet center van out there that actually can help veterans with, PTSD or whatever. So, I mean, out there would be a lot better parking, and it's going to be easy access to all the area veterans.
So there's not a need, it's that this is an improvement.
Well, I mean, in my book, I would say it's a need because, like I said, the food pantry's downstairs, and that's, one of our big things during the coronavirus. We have numerous veterans coming in for the food pantry, and some of the veterans, would have to go downstairs. We go down with them, of course, and then we would have to either carry it up for them, because there's some veterans in wheelchairs or walkers, or luckily, like I said, the IT department is able to give us a cart that we can just load the cart up and bring it up and then take it out to their car and help them out. Where if we get the actual, one level, it'd be so much easier for, especially the veterans in wheelchairs or walkers. And also, they have to go downstairs for the bathroom because there's really no bathroom area up here on the first floor.
Randy, Dave Baker, one of the needs, if we're breaking it down into needs, I mean, it's access, right? That's a need that's something that needs to be improved.
Right. I mean, I know during the budget time, I took a couple of pictures of that ice. I mean, that was going, from the curb 10 feet out, especially right in front of the two handicap spots. I mean, me personally, luckily someone took a picture of it, sent it on Facebook, and, and then a couple of veterans said, hey, we'll be down with our shovels and everything else. And then, the city of Dubuque's like, well, you should be posting. I didn't post it, but I mean, if the city of Dubuque doesn't care about our veterans, I mean, at least the county should be able to care about them.
I won't get into that. I think the city of Dubuque most likely does care about veterans, but we're responsible for taking care of them. But one of the other needs is the food pantry that we established, I believe back in the FY17, and that's been a success. But I know you've somewhat outgrown the area that you had in mind for the food pantry. And if this new location is approved, you would be able to expand service to veterans in the area of providing food, including perhaps perishable products with refrigeration or expanded freezer.
Right. I mean, yeah, because currently right now, I know down in the basement, when you come off the elevator, we have, I think 4 shelving units out in the hallway because we used all the room up in the back, and that stores a lot of the canned goods and everything like that. Our freezers are pretty plumb full right now, but we do have certain veterans that come in and asking for like milk and stuff, but unfortunately we can't hold milk due to the fact of we would have to, you know, use more freezer space for the milk. I mean, we've got 2 small freezers, and then them 2 big freezers, and it just, and it's just kind of a hassle just going up and down every time a veteran comes in. Luckily, a lot of our veterans understand that they call before they do come here. That way we do have someone available for them. But I also don't like having veterans sit around if myself or my entire staff has another client or doing something, and then they got to wait, you know, 20, 30 minutes before someone's able to go downstairs with them to go through that food bank.
And Randy, the current location, there's really no way to expand at your current location to expand that food pantry. Is that correct?
No, because I know the cleaning department has their little area back in the back corner, and then IT took over the I guess the old jail cellars, I guess you want to call them. That's their area of operation.
Well, we have a complete conference room that's never really used right there on the main floor. That seats, I don't know, about 25, 35 people.
Right, with that conference room, my understanding is that right now we got to, you know, request to use it, and we got to get all the department heads to make sure that it's all right to use it.
Well, but you're talking to us today. So if that's a big barrier, that could in fact be, perhaps be a food pantry staffed with carts. I mean, these are all things that are things to be improved. So I think that's a great conversation for us to have about what improvements we might make to the current situation. If we want to look at, you know, are there, I'm not seeing needs, I'm seeing things that are improvements, which are important to discuss. But when I go and I start looking at moving a department that has no cost to the county footprint in terms of monthly budget for overhead and budget space, rental space, utility space, it's contained within things that we would be paying anyway. And now we look at Plaza 20. The rumor mill is that you're talking, and this letter I think alludes to, you're looking at the some very large square footage in Plaza 20 that isn't directly connected to the Veterans Health Center. So, you know, I've asked Chris Soder to jump in. How many square feet do the veterans currently have?
Can I also
and then
go
how
back
does
to
that
the
fit with what they
conference
might
room
need there?
And that conference room in the back, you got to remember, we can't get wheelchairs back there. We tried, when we did our cookout here, we actually had to put the veterans that were in wheelchairs around our desk because they couldn't get in the back with the other veterans because the doors are not big enough for a wheelchair.
Okay.
And
but it does allow us greater space.
Either because they would have to go up steps.
Sure. Randy, how many square feet do you have right now?
That, I forget, maybe Christy can answer that since she kind of worked with our, the building here with us at that time.
Chris Soder, do you know how many square feet the veterans currently occupy?
Approximately 2,400 square feet when you include all the basement space they're utilizing right now.
So that includes the food pantry?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably a little bit less, but right around that area, that size.
And how much of that is just for the offices?
2/3 of it.
The first floor, this is Christy Monk. I just wanted to state that the first floor, which is the offices, is just over 1,700 square feet.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So, Anne, apparently you're not in favor of the idea of creating a one-stop shop for veterans. That's your.
You completely misunderstand me. This is first conversation. I've moved my own personal business in the past. We look at square footage. There's a way that folks go about this. I'm sure that Supervisor Wickham knows that as well as he helps small businesses. You're looking at what accommodations you need and what the fee is per square foot. So, before we start spending the taxpayers' money, we want to go through that same process about what square footage do we have? What is it that we need versus what is it that we're willing to pay for? What can we improve where we are? There's going to be a lot of things that you're going to look at before you make a move. Moves are tremendously more expensive than you think, just even to get to your new place. So, you know, there's a bunch of questions to get answered before we say it's a good or not a good idea. I've certainly have heard the rumor mill. I don't know, you know, Randy, how many people on Facebook voted. You said it was a great percentage of yeses. I think I might have been one of those yeses, but I don't know how many people voted overall.
I believe it was, I would have to go back and look at our Facebook posts, but I believe it was close to about 300.
Okay, so 300 folks think it's a good idea to explore that. So again, I don't mischaracterize my questions by being negatives. If there's truly a need and that's really our solution, we should look at it. But the proposal that we've got that came to Supervisor Baker in February, it has some hefty price tags in it for fees that we're going to start incurring on an hourly basis. And I'd like to see us have, you know, some more work sessions to, you know, actually start getting answers to things that are knowable.
This is Supervisor Wickham. I'll just maybe make my brief comments. And so, you know, government is, particularly in our seats, it's about prioritization and about what we think is going to bring benefits to the public with their tax dollars. We currently have very good fund balances. I've mentioned that we've been in a very good fiscal place. That doesn't mean obviously that we spend it all the time and just keep doing things as normal through COVID. But as I look at priorities, the veterans are a priority. And from day one, I was always kind of wondering the facilities there, if they really were the best facilities for veterans that are typically gaining in age. So I would definitely support the recommendation of the Veterans Affairs Commissioners and our director as well. So I'm looking forward to moving forward.
Okay, I'm going to ask Christy Monk to, because, you know, I guess one of the things in the early discussions here have been, you know, we have the veterans in a location that's relatively low cost, may not be, you know, the place that they would like to be, but, you know, they were placed there and they haven't been there all that long. It's not like they've been there forever. But we also have reason to believe that space would not go empty, that there would be other departments that could get into that location and use that square footage. So to me, it boils down to, I guess, the need, but also the want to take care of our veterans, but also the cost. And that's, I think, where we're asking Christy to put some kind of a plan together to let us know what the cost would be, what the outcome would be, what the access would be. So Christy, I think, is an expert in this, in my opinion, and we've had very good luck working with her on other projects. So I feel very comfortable with her involvement. So,
has anyone approached the collies, the landowners out there, the property owners, about what the costs might be? Have we begun conversation to know our costs before we start spending money with a hired expert to help us design things?
Yeah, go ahead, Christy.
No, I was just going to say that I've spoken with Michael Colley about the availability of the space, but we have not discussed dollars. So on my end, I have not.
And this is Supervisor Baker. I have not either. I have viewed the facility, the available space, and really I was more into listening to the reaction from Randy Renison and our valued staff from the Veterans Affairs Department and the three commissioners. And it was, and I'll just frame it the way that I told Tom Parsley, the chair of the board of the Veterans Commission. I said, Tom, if the answer is hell no, we're not interested, just tell us that, and then we'll, you know, we'll move forward. And that's when, and Randy can jump in if he wants, but the commissioners did do an on-site meeting there and said that they thought it had significant potential and that they'd like to at least do an exploratory going forward and see if it's feasible. Everybody knows we're going to have to look at cost items, but it's kind of like a chicken and egg. Where do you start? And first thing is, this location fits really well with the one-stop shop that the veterans that I have talked to, including folks from the Veterans Freedom Center, American Legion Post 6, and others. And matter of fact, I haven't talked to anybody that thinks it's a bad idea, other than, can we afford it? So that's, I think, where we're at. And I think that's where Christy can help us put that together.
Well, if I might, you have a proposal for you, Supervisor Baker. We have a facilities manager. I think that's Chris Soder. And I think that he could assist us in working up something about, you know, he just sent a message to everyone. The total square footage of what we're looking at is over 16,000 square feet. So maybe we could get some things, again, some kind of in writing, you know, put up some ideas about what's the current square footage, what are the needs or improvements we need to make, and then look ahead to say, boy, 16,000 square feet, would the landlords even provide us with a slice of that? That's something that we've had a discussion with another office in the last week about whether you would rent a smaller space. Those are easy things to do that do not take hiring a design firm to do. And those are, you know, you're doing that, Chris, right now with our move that needs to happen quickly with the city assessor's office. So kind of a, you know, an assessment of some cost ideas, some discussion about what are the space needs. I think we could work up something that shows that we've answered a lot of these questions. It will help Christy's job be better when she gets that document from us. You know, what's the purpose? What's the mission? Do we want to be able to grill? Are we looking at putting in a patio? I mean, what is it that we want to accomplish at the new one-stop shop? And what is the potential space need and the cost for that? So, you know, there's some drafting here that I would think we could be able to do in-house without starting at, you know, $150 an hour to have somebody else help us create that plan. Isn't that doable, Chris?
This is Chris. Yeah, I feel we can get some decent numbers to work with that way. The question is when we were there originally, we also had Denise and her staff there for the elections to be able to better utilize this space for multiple departments. You know, we'd originally looked at half of it, which is about 8,600 square feet, somewhere in that area, and putting veterans and elections annex in there. I don't know where Denise is at with that thought process, but that's where I would need a little bit more direction as to who we want to put in there, and I can start putting some additional information together for it.
One of the things that we talked about last week, Christy and I had a phone conversation looking at space needs overall for the county. And she was bringing me up to date on some things that her design firm has done for us over the years, improvement, design plans for space assessment. You know, in my short term on the supervisors, I've had multiple departments feel they need to move position and move location. Space is something that we talk about constantly, even though we just completed building the West Campus. So, and I've also heard Supervisor Wickham, you know, there's a horror story that you share, what rightly so, and I appreciate the voice of experience and wisdom on that. But do we have such a space need that we need to do something that looks beyond kind of the next person moving here, and then so forth. Do a comprehensive plan, let's say. Anybody feel we need that?
I thought we were in discussions on a for assessing, looking in the future or whatever. But I thought you were one of those that didn't want to continue with that. I know that was probably COVID-19 related, but I think I'm comfortable with at least kicking the tires on this. And Chris Soder was involved. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, in the tour of the facility. And we're not looking at 16,000 square feet because at one point there was another governmental agency looking at a good part of that building. But having the access issues, the one-stop shop for our veterans is enough for me to at least take a look at this. So let's hear from Christy. And if you're, I appreciate this, but there's 3 of us involved in this. It sounds like 2 of us are interested in moving, at least getting some additional information on this. If the issue is, are we gonna spend X amount of dollars to have somebody do some sketches and tell us what it would look like, let's at least hear from that person. So I'm gonna move us to let Christy talk about her ideas.
Okay. Well, hi supervisors, Christy Monk with FEH Design here.
Good afternoon.
Hi, it is afternoon, isn't it? The morning got away from me. But what you have before you is a proposal to essentially work with county individuals to develop a space needs program. The proposal was originally developed for veterans and the election annex as the 2 separate entities. We would meet with both departments, come up with some goals, come up with the proposed space needs. It sounds like we'll want to come up with maybe a prioritized list of spaces in terms of wants and then what you could get by with, and then do some design layouts. The separate secure entrance is important for veterans, so they have the visibility and the ease of accessing their space. So we would come up with a few different design options and then work with the Plaza 20 landlord on costing to see if it would make more sense to put it in the lease, or if the build out, how the build out would be handled in terms of cost. So we propose to do this hourly. We can do this very cost effectively. We can try to do it as quickly and efficiently as possible to try not to bump up against that higher number. But I did meet on site with the Veterans Board and with the elections, and we did talk about how that space might get developed, but we didn't go into too much detail. So the proposal is just to get started so that everybody knows what the potential cost and layout would be.
Okay, Christy, Dave Baker here. In this proposal, I'm seeing that you're estimating it would require 40 to 50 hours, and the cost parameters of $4,000 to $7,000. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Christy, is it possible that the property owners won't rent us just 6,200 square feet out of this 16,000 square footage?
That's a good question. It did sound like they were open to dividing the space.
This is Chris Soder. we met out there again last week to do a little walk around and talk to the folks out there again. And one of the things he said is that other entity that was going to be moving into that area is not moving in at this point. So that just an additional piece of information to help make some decisions moving forward.
So the space might all be available, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the county wants to take it. So that's why we would develop that program and come up with the actual specific space needs and then work on a solution that would leave the adjacent space available with entry for some other tenant.
I mean, we initially looked at the spot immediately next to the health center, and that square footage was so large that they refused to even consider us as a tenant, that we needed to take how many thousands of square feet there? How big was that, Christy?
Oh, I think that space was around 50,000 square feet.
Right.
So it's a little bit more than, than the county probably wants.
So we've been walking around Plaza 20 trying to find something that's a better fit, and that, you know, and I think for purposes of Dubuque, it being Dubuque, folks should know that this is the empty space that was once a grocery store, for everyone to have that kind of in their mind about what we're thinking of. And it has a loading dock, and those things would be helpful to the elections office and so forth. So it's not a no, but I do think we want to see that we are getting our questions answered and the business side of things done. Critically, that will tell us whether we can afford to be there before we go into design ideas about, you know, what we want it to look like and what the finishings might be.
I just would like to put it out there that we're just talking conceptual design. So it's just a plan layout. So it would be pretty basic in terms of what the design services would cover at this point.
Does that mean you would be, actually, would we be hiring you then to talk to the property owner to talk about whether this is a feasible lease agreement, or is that going to go back to Chris Soder?
We could do it either way. I have a level of comfort talking to Michael Colley, so I wouldn't have a problem if Chris, Michael Colley, and I were to meet as a group and talk through the particulars, or if you had a preference that you wanted county individuals to handle it. So, however.
I would like someone to ask that.
Okay, I think the purpose of the work session today was not to take action. It was a work session to discuss Veterans Affairs and election annex locations. So I think Christy has given us some parameters, and again, we're not unfamiliar with the work of Christy Monk and her firm. We've had successful projects in my time on the board with the exterior of the county courthouse, the West Campus, which probably is one of the bigger projects we've ever had in Dubuque County. And others as well, some interior, smaller projects, et cetera. But I think, you know, to get the ball rolling, if you will, to do a feasibility study, I think we need some information to look at. So again, I go back to the chicken and egg. If you ask Dave Baker to do this, I can't draw a good stick man. So there are certain things we need help with. And I think in the past, Christy Monk and FEH have been a good resource for the Dubuque County Supervisors. I'll let Supervisor Wickham jump in if he wants, but I think if we're establishing consensus on this, I would, look to establish that, and then we can take action on this as needed. $4,000 to $7,000, I think, is a good investment to see if we can improve access and other important issues for our veterans. So I guess if we're establishing consensus on the proposal, I'm in favor of it. And in the issue with Chris Soder, Chris has been involved in the discussion process and the tours. I didn't even know about the tour from last week, so that's good. I'm glad that Chris is involved and has his head in the tent on this project.
I know that Stella Rundy, our budget director, has not been involved. So, you know, again, my request would be that this is a work session talking about things in a preliminary basis. I think, you know, we see maybe what we don't know, and to see if some of our team, our own hired experts in-house, can start to put some of these things together to know what possible square footages might be, what some of this we can do. We don't need to hire somebody to find out whether or not the landlord would sell us a slice of this. That should be able to be done by a facilities manager and a phone call. If we want to explore more information, that would be a welcome phone call to the property manager. They'd be delighted with that call. And maybe we can begin a discussion that way as we build the information we need to come back again.
This is Chris Soder. One of the things that had come up in the last couple of visits with them is they're willing to carve out a piece, a reasonable, facsimile of half of that area for us, which is going to be roughly around 8,000 square feet. One of the benefits of that is having that space is we can move multiple offices into that area if we choose to do so.
And Chris, the whole thing would be, it would be a good location for a basically government building, subject to us being able to afford it, to the feasibility on a cost basis. But go ahead.
I concur, Dave.
So I think, there's certainly some excitement on the veteran side. Obviously there's a lot of details that would need to be worked out, including the big question, can we afford to do this? Will the taxpayers support this? I haven't heard any in my discussions any negativity about this, but I think we need to do the due diligence and the hard work. And if I guess worst case scenario is if we can't afford it, veterans will stay where they're at, and maybe we'll look out for other locations. But and if I recall, Mr. Colley, I believe, mentioned that they did some kind of a veterans discount for the veterans clinic. And so I don't think that's, ruled out. Perhaps that would apply to Dubuque County as well. I just don't have any cost numbers to know what the discount would come from if it exists. But I'm sure I'm not the only one that heard that statement or that discussion, but it's a great location. Everybody knows that. So
something to also just to point out is, as we talk about other departments that want to move, other departments that want to change location and grow, could we have that also somehow be known before us with what their space needs are and who they are? I think Denise Dolan's with us. I think she could probably talk about what she might kind of vision for her office. But are there others? I do get calls from department managers and other elected officials at the courthouse that feel they could use some more space too. I have had one citizen reach out to me who's in this business and say that, you know, they would like to see us do something that's comprehensive and not go at this through the piecemeal. We have departments now and properties we're renting, we're getting a little scattered. Should we be looking at something more permanent? So maybe those are bigger discussions that people don't want to have, but citizens are watching us constantly find space for our departments and wondering what we're doing.
I understand that, and I think that's good for us to be looking for, you know, having a plan that makes sense, a long-term plan for this. And I think there have been discussions. I've been involved in some of those, but I think since Stella Rundy and Don Sherman have been here, they have been, you know, there have been some discussions. I think perhaps we need to, you know, have more of a public discussion. But in this case, the idea came from veterans because of that veterans clinic. And I think if you've been out to the veterans clinic, I was there for the ribbon cutting. I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. I think they have a long-term lease with the Collies. So the idea of a one-stop shop is really where this came from. So, you know, if there's other landlords, business folks in the leasing business that, you know, maybe would like their property to be looked at, the one thing they don't have is the veterans clinic under contract. And that's really what drew the attention of veterans.
Right, and Randy,
Mr.
I'll bring the
Chairman?
question maybe back to you, Randy. I'm sorry to cut you off, Denise, but Randy, you indicated you have someone, you currently do meet with veterans at the veterans clinic. Could you do that every day? Do you have conference space there?
Say again?
You currently meet with veterans. Your staff goes out to the Veterans Health Center to meet with people. Could you do that every day?
Well, that's up to the CBOC. I know the reason we went out there was because when they had their grand opening down in the Quad Cities, I know their population is a lot bigger than ours, but they had roughly between 5,000 to 6,000 people within the first 3 weeks come in, try to get benefits. That's why they wanted us out there to help out with them. That way the doctors and their staff can worry more about, you know, the healthcare of veterans, and we can actually do the paperwork for them. So haven't really talked to Ann Fessler up there. And I know it was just a short term because I do know there's a lot of red tape of us being there. Luckily they gave us the office that was supposed to be for a security officer, but I don't know if they're hiring one. I mean, that's all federal side of the house, so I can't really speak for them. And if they really want us there.
Office hours there this week?
Currently, they are still kind of slowly, gradually reopening. I know they got a big tent out there. A lot of veterans have to go there, wait in the tent, and then when their appointment's ready, then they get called in, and then they walk in, do their appointment, and get out real quick. Iowa City VA, same concept. They just started finally opening up. I know our shuttle's still shut down, taking our veterans down to Iowa City for appointments. They're trying to hash out the final details on how they're going to protect the drivers and also the patients with inside that van.
So before COVID, how many days a week did you meet with veterans out there?
3 days.
And could you have done 5 days?
Well, we could have, but our commissioners and Ann Fessler, they worked it out together because we still have a lot of veterans that come down here. That way we didn't have, you know, short staff down here not taking care of veterans that would come down here and help out.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Denise.
There was FEH worked on a space study prior to the building of the West Campus. I don't know that looked at I don't remember that comprehensively looked at all space for every office in the county. We ended up with West Campus, which was limited just to certain offices. There was no additional space or thought put into possibly having expansion at any point in time. It also did not include any additional storage, so that we're still renting storage across the street at the Kirby building. So I guess you can pull that space study out, and possibly Christy can, or there could be conversations with Christy about possibly embellishing that or adding on to that to see what would be needed as far as other offices, as Supervisor McDonough has mentioned, looking at something more comprehensively rather than just space for a few specific offices. It is my understanding that the space that is being discussed at Plaza 20 is not even available for anyone to get in and start doing any construction or remodeling on until the 1st of November. So we have some time to look at some other options, and maybe there would be something that the county would be interested in, all 16,000 square feet. Or maybe there is something else in town that's available for a larger amount or a smaller amount than that. It's not like all of this has to happen tomorrow, because you know, that space isn't available, and possibly having Christy pull that off the shelf along with, you know, a conceptual of something out at Plaza 20, and maybe her conceptual won't be worthwhile if they aren't willing to split that space up for what we need. So there's a couple of different ways to move along here, but I would like to see a bigger picture possibly taken on the whole thing.
And Denise, as long as we talked about, you know, taking a look at this for the elections annex, obviously, I think if we did a poll, it would be considered better location by most folks than what we have now. But there would also be, if we weren't in that building down on Jones Street, or whatever the alley's name is, I don't think people would be too upset about moving out of there, I guess is what I'm saying. And there would be, you know, we had an option to look at purchasing that, and we declined. We did not think that that was fitting into our long-term plans to stay there. I don't know if, you know, to me, it would be in the a better location for the taxpayers, for the citizens when they go to vote. Better facilities, better parking. That's something to think about. But what originally got my attention here was the veterans. But if the discussion leads to, you know, if we can reasonably, you know, afford to do this, and it enhances the services and access for our citizens, then we should at least do our due diligence and check it out.
Where would we get a copy of the last space assessment? Christy, can you send that to us? Dawn, do you have a file marked as such? Sounds like that may all predate the folks who are on the board. I don't know, Jay, if you have that.
I can send it.
There is an older document. The original document, say 5 years ago, I don't think FEH did that. I think there was another consultant, and it was pricey. So we've
It was-
spent hundreds of thousands of dollars going around and round in this, and we've just spent about an hour going round and round on it.
This is Chris. The original document was a Mercer study that was done shortly before I took this position. And we do have copies of that on file.
Can you find one of those and send it to me? If it's on file somewhere, I don't know what on file means.
Well, we've got hard copy, and I'll dig through my electronic files to see if I've got a digital copy too.
And then whatever FEH did most recently, can you send that, Christy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess at this point, this is a work session to discuss Veterans Affairs and election annex locations. And we have some numbers, parameters from Christy Monk and FEH. I guess I'm looking for consensus about whether we want to move forward and continue this discussion and approve the modest proposal that Christy has put forth here, ranging between $4,000 and $7,000. If there's no other interest, then I guess.
Are you looking for a motion, Chair?
No, not a motion. I'm looking for consensus because this was a work session
Well,
with.
I haven't changed
discussion.
my position, so I've been
Okay.
quiet. I haven't changed my position.
All right.
Don't think quiet means I'm changing my mind.
All right, thank you. All right, so it appears we have majority consensus to move this forward. And we won't assume anything. And then we would ask that this be put into form of a resolution. And of course, then we'll continue the discussion at that point. And perhaps if there is additional information requested, please provide that. I guess that would include like the needs assessment, the space assessment that Chris Soder was referring to. I guess I would like to move this to our next agenda as a resolution.
Are we hiring them
Sounds
then
good.
just the two offices for the veterans and for, I guess I'm trying to find out what this is, Dave. What are we going to have a resolution on?
I would say for this, it's for the two departments that have expressed interest and in being involved in this. Again, we're probably not having this discussion if it weren't for veterans and the potential for a one-stop shop. But so right now I think it's two, but I think through the process it could expand. And if that were the case, then I would expect Christy to come back with an addendum perhaps to this proposal.
It should be stressed that nothing that we're doing is affecting elections for the upcoming election, so that we don't create any kind of confusion for the voters that anything relating to elections would be occurring in the new year, or at least after the election is completed.
That's a very good point, Ann. It would certainly not be impacting the 2020 elections. Okay, anything else on this topic? Dawn Dawn Sherman, that'll show up. You can get with Christy and get the appropriate information for the next week's meeting.
Absolutely. We'll do a resolution to approve and authorize you to sign an updated agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all for your input. Thank you, Christy. All right. we are going to move on here. We have a resolution approving the VNA or Visiting Nurse Association contract for FY21. And I don't know who's taking the lead on this. Dawn, did you want to start?
Yes, we do have the Board of Health chairman or chairperson on. They did approve it, so I would ask him to maybe give a summary of his meeting.
This is Tom Beschen. Yes, this issue was discussed last week at our, I believe it was last week at our meeting. This is the exact amount that was approved as a part of the 2021 budget plan. The VNA service rates were approved, I believe it was in April. So this is just a finalizing of the agreement between the VNA and the County of Dubuque to perform the services required for the Board of Health through fiscal year 2021. It represents about a 3% increase from what was seen in 2020.
Okay. Are there any questions for?
I have no questions.
Okay. Any questions for Chair Tom Beschen regarding the VNA FY21 contract?
No.
All right. Supervisor Wickham, did you have a motion?
I will. I will make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the resolution, and the amount is $299,009 for fiscal year 2021. All right, any other discussion?
We should attach a note of thanks.
I couldn't agree more, Ann. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Carried 3-0. Resolution is approved. Thank you, Chair Beschen.
You're welcome.
Okay, next up is a work session with the Human Resource Administrator regarding collective bargaining. This will be a closed session for the purpose of discussing strategy for upcoming labor negotiations with the county's organized employees pursuant to Iowa Code Section 20.17, subsection 3. We haven't, I'm going to ask Dawn Sherman and or Denise Dolan to explain about doing a closed session on Zoom because we haven't had real good luck with this in the past. So if somebody wants to explain, I would appreciate it.
This is Dawn. So currently we are not live streaming this over YouTube. What we are doing is our IT department is capturing it both in Zoom and today through the board chambers. And then they will be able to edit out the closed session and then forward that to Denise and her team. They will approve the posting of it and they will have that posted by, I don't remember, it's sometime tomorrow morning, the following morning. So because people are able to participate in Zoom, Denise had a great recommendation that let's not live stream it on YouTube at this current time, and it'll be posted the next day. So it'll be posted without the closed session attached to it as part of the
So we have not set up a separate Zoom for the closed session?
No, not on this one. We'll just lock
I
it
think
out.
well, then IT has to edit, which they weren't overly thrilled about, which is why we discussed having two separate Zooms. I will have to work with them tomorrow morning to see if they can get this edited.
Could we create another Zoom for like 2 o'clock or 1:30?
You can do another Zoom immediately.
Yeah, I could do it. I can have one set up and sent out within, if we take maybe a 5-minute recess, I can have one set up.
Does that meet the public notice requirement?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's on our agenda.
Well, then
Public
that's-
can't participate in a closed session, Ann, so there's no requirement there.
I understand that. It's just about notice, but it's fine. I think if we just send out new Zoom numbers, I make a motion to recess for 10 minutes.
Okay.
I'll
There's a
second that.
motion made and seconded to recess for 10 minutes, and then we'll have the closed session, which I assume will be sent out to the closed session participants only. Is that correct?
You are correct. I'll send an email out here within the next few minutes.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All in favor of recess signify by saying aye.
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 All right, we are in recess. Thank you.